Now, just as a general rule of thumb, if you were trying to convince the public that there's nothing to see here, nothing at all, it's a very good idea to get your story straight. Not that Donald Trump has ever been particularly consistent on the matter of Jeffrey Epstein, but today, yet another whiplash moment in the Trump administration having to do with what exactly the American people are being asked to believe. For starters, just so it's top of mind, recall the way Donald Trump himself spoke of the controversy not even 1 month ago.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work.
In your Truth Social this morning, you mentioned past supporters when you were talking about the Epstein issue. Does that mean that you're effectively disowning any supporters who are now calling?
I lost a lot of faith in certain people, yeah. I lost, because they got duped by the Democrats.
Stupid Republicans. That's what Donald Trump called some of his most fervent supporters. That's who really wants answers on the Epstein conspiracy. And again, those are his words, not ours, about who bought into the conspiracy theories about Epstein. Remember that when you hear what JD Vance has to say about this very same controversy.
I laugh at the Democrats who are now all of a sudden so interested in the Epstein files. For 4 years, Joe Biden and the Democrats did absolutely nothing about this story. We know that Jeffrey Epstein had a lot of connections with left-wing politicians and left-wing billionaires, and now President Trump has demanded full transparency from this, and yet somehow the Democrats are attacking him and not the Biden administration, which did nothing for 4 years.
I laugh at the Democrats. For some reason, I don't picture him like really laughing ever at anything. Can you imagine the sound of JD Vance belly laughing? Me neither. All right, back to Epstein. For those of you keeping score at home, 1 month ago, the Epstein controversy, according to Donald Trump, was a complete hoax perpetrated by the Democrats. Today, though, the Democrats are apparently engaged in a cover-up to obscure the truth about the real scandal. Even though, again, there is no scandal, it's a hoax. If you're confused, don't worry, it's not you, it's them. In reality, the Trump administration's ongoing responses to Epstein-related questions are a tangled mess of their own contradictions. In that interview we just showed you, JD Vance maintains that Trump's goal is to be, quote, as fully transparent as possible. Keep that in mind as we tell you about another major development, breaking news on this story today. This morning, a federal judge denied the Trump Justice Department's request to unseal grand jury materials related to Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal case and criminal trial. As part of that ruling, U.S. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer makes clear that the material in question, the grand jury material, does not identify anyone other than Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell as having sexual contact with a minor. And the judge adds this, that, quote, with only very minor exceptions, the evidence from the Maxwell grand juries is, quote, a matter of public record already, and therefore would provide next to nothing new. More from that ruling, quote, the one colorable argument under that doctrine for unsealing in this case, in fact, is that doing so would expose as disingenuous the government's public explanations for moving to unseal. A member of the public appreciating that the Maxwell grand jury materials do not contribute anything to public knowledge might conclude that the government's motion for their unsealing was aimed not at transparency, but at diversion, aimed not at full disclosure, but at the illusion of such. A judge said that. A judge. The illusion of transparency, in that judge's words, is where we begin today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Former top prosecutor at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman's back. Michelle Goldberg is here. She's a columnist for the New York Times. She's also an MSNBC contributor, an MSNBC columnist and contributor, author of the To the Contrary newsletter. Charlie Sykes is here. Charlie Sykes, I'm going to start with you. JD Vance is in sort of the manosphere version of a mud fight with Marco Rubio to inherit the earth, to inherit the megaverse. This is not what Trump has been saying, that there is copious hidden material, and in it is evidence of Democrats going to Epstein Island. Where did that come from?
Oh, it does make my head hurt. But you know, the real mystery to all of this is what it could possibly be in these files that Donald Trump thinks will move the voters who have accepted so much. I mean, think about what Trump's base has been willing to swallow, what they have been willing to tolerate, that has not budged his support. And yet there's something about these files that has him twisting in circles, diverting, coming up with all of these, let's throw all the spaghetti against the wall, explanations from JD Vance. So, I mean, this really is the mystery, because Donald Trump has been, he has been immune from any consequences for any of his scandals. He's a convicted felon. He was indicted. He's a career criminal. He tried to overthrow the government. He was bragging about grabbing women by the private parts. He's been found legally liable for sexual abuse, and none of that has hurt his standing with the MAGA base. So what makes him think that this is different? Because his behavior certainly would suggest that there's something in there that he either has to keep covered up or that he has to spin with maximum effect. So, I mean, JD Vance's position, apparently he has been tasked with coming up with all kinds of, putting out the chaff, putting out the blue smoke in the mirrors, convincing people that there's nothing to see, and if there is anything to see, it must be left-wing Democrats. But again, coming back to it, what is in these files that has Donald Trump so in a bundle?
Well, and Michelle, let's go with J.D. Vance's version that he says makes him laugh, which I do not believe. If it's all about Democrats going to Epstein Island, why isn't it out like this morning?
Well, I mean, I think that that's the obvious rejoinder. The idea that Donald Trump is trying for sort of maximum transparency. It's transparently untrue, but I think that what you're seeing is that as the Trump administration tries to wriggle out of this, they're trying to redirect attention to Democrats. So you see them subpoenaing a bunch of people, Hillary Clinton, not Alex Acosta, certainly not inviting Epstein's victims who are coming forward to testify before Congress, but trying to get a bunch of Democrats thinking that they're going to somehow embarrass Hillary Clinton. At the same time, I mean, the other kind of big piece of this scandal has been the Trump administration's treatment of Ghislaine Maxwell, the meetings with Todd Blanche, moving her. We still have no idea why or what was promised to this minimum security prison that sex offenders are not supposed to be eligible to serve at. And so what did they want her to say? What did they want in exchange for that? One possible explanation is that they were hoping that she would point the finger at certain Democrats to take the heat off Donald Trump and give the base, the base might not get full transparency, but part of their dream for the whole unfolding of this revelation is that their enemies would be humiliated and punished.
And on that front, let me ask you, Andrew Weissman, to pick up what the judge said in really stunningly stark words today about the goals of the request from the United States Department of Justice on releasing grand jury materials are, in his view, not about transparency.
In a striking display of internal contradictions, the Trump administration's narrative on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal has shifted dramatically, drawing sharp criticism and judicial rebuke. Just weeks ago, the controversy was dismissed as a big hoax perpetrated by Democrats, with some Republicans labeled as stupid for falling into the trap. Supporters demanding answers were accused of being duped, framing the entire issue as a partisan ploy with no substance. Yet, in a recent interview, the vice president laughed off Democratic interest in Epstein's files, claiming the Biden administration ignored the story for 4 years despite connections to left-wing politicians and billionaires. He praised the president for demanding full transparency, accusing Democrats of attacking the administration instead of addressing the alleged cover-up. This pivot has left observers puzzled. If the scandal is non-existent, why portray Democrats as obstructing the truth? Adding to the confusion, a federal judge today denied the Justice Department's request to unseal grand jury materials from Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal case. U.S. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer ruled that the documents identify no one besides Epstein and Maxwell in sexual contact with minors. He emphasized that, With minor exceptions, the evidence is already public record, offering next to nothing new. In a pointed critique, the judge suggested the motion was not for genuine disclosure but to create an illusion of transparency, potentially aimed at diversion rather than full revelation. By unsealing, it might only expose the government's disingenuous motives, he noted. Experts analyzing the developments argue this tangled messaging reveals deeper anxieties. One commentator questioned what could possibly be in the files to unsettle a base that has tolerated convictions, indictments, attempts to overthrow the government, and liability for sexual abuse. The president's scandals have historically faced no consequences among loyalists, yet the frantic spinning alternating between hoax claims and transparency demands suggests something uniquely damaging lurks within. Another observer highlighted the administration's efforts to redirect scrutiny toward Democrats, such as subpoenaing figures like Hillary Clinton while ignoring Epstein's victims or former Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, who oversaw Epstein's lenient 2008 plea deal. Notably absent are invitations for survivors to testify before Congress. Instead, focus has shifted to high-profile Democrats, possibly to embarrass them and placate the base with visions of humiliated enemies. A significant undercurrent involves Maxwell's treatment under the new administration. Reports detail meetings with the president's lawyer and her transfer to a minimum security prison ineligible for sex offenders. Speculation abounds. What was promised in exchange? Did officials hope she would implicate Democrats to deflect heat from the president? If the goal is exposing left-wing ties, why withhold potentially exonerating or incriminating evidence? Legal analysts view the judge's ruling as a direct call-out of political theater. The request for grand jury materials was doomed to fail, positioning courts as scapegoats for blocked transparency. Yet, the administration controls vast non-grand jury data, hundreds of gigabytes, that could be released immediately. Refusal to do so fuels suspicions of a deliberate distraction. Ultimately, the episode underscores a pattern, promises of openness clashing with actions suggesting concealment. If files truly implicate Democrats in Epstein's orbit, their swift release would vindicate the administration. The delay implies the opposite, material potentially devastating to the president, eclipsing even past controversies like the Russia probe. As the story unfolds, it raises profound questions about accountability, with the public left to decipher a web of contradictions amid calls for truth that seem more performative than sincere. The administration's maneuvers, from Vance's defenses to judicial denials, paint a picture of a scandal managed not for resolution, but for political survival.